Hi guys, in this video I'll be recapping part 2 of the Happily Ever After tell-all, where I'll cover Shaun's interviews with Kara and Guillermo and Brandon and Julia. If you haven't yet, please check out my previous video where I covered the first half of part 2, which included Shaun's ongoing interview with the Florida Collective, as well as everyone's second night cohabitating at the mansion. If you're interested in recaps of reality shows like 90 Day Fiancé and Love is Blind, please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other videos and playlists. We pick up where we left off with the couples returning to the tell-all stage. Shaun starts with Kara and Guillermo. She says she understands there was some flirting the night before. Kara says with everything so heavy between them, they've been joking to lighten things up. Shaun asks the status of their relationship. Kara says they're separated and living separate but co-parenting and still married. Shaun asks, "So Kara, you're still living in the house that you and Guillermo bought together?" Kara says yes. Shaun says, "So you bought the house with both your funds?" And Kara says, "Their funds were combined, so in that sense, they used both their funds." She says his name is on the house deed, but not on the loan, and when they bought the house, she was okay with him being on the deed, since she wanted a future with him. Now she thinks she did everything to get them in the house, and it's not fair for him to get 50% ownership, and that she's trying to get his name off the deed. She says he doesn't live there and didn't contribute money. Guillermo says that's not correct, that she'd take all his money and apply it to the house, and it was more than what she was putting into it. Kara clarifies that as far as the house budget, it was primarily her contributing, but says sometimes it was more him, depending on the month. Alexi says you can't separate the two. You were living together and sharing everything. She says if he paid for food back then, that food doesn't continue to earn equity over the next 20 years like a house does. Guillermo says that's a dumb way to look at it, and I agree with that. He says at the end of the day, whatever they contribute should be won, and that he came from nothing and doesn't care if he goes back there. He just wants to have a good life, and if fighting with her won't give him that, she can keep it. Shaun says to him, "So you've decided to give up your 50%? And he says yes. Matt tells him that's very commendable, but if the shoe was on the other foot, and you were paying the mortgage and she was paying the rest of the bills, she'd be saying she's paying more now. Kara gives Matt a look. Guillermo says there's no equality, and that if he did the same things she does, he'd look really bad. Shaun asks for examples. Guillermo says she's implied that the US is not his country, and she'll keep their kid. And if that's true, I'm not liking Kara much at this point. Shaun asks if Kara would treat him differently if they didn't have a son together, and he says yes, that there's a small amount of respect he feels from her because they have a kid. Andre asks what he means by disrespect. Guillermo says she talks down to him. She's rude and calls him names. He says even Kara's mom told him that the way she speaks to him is bad. Kara says her tone can be sharp when she's angry, and maybe he finds that tone disrespectful, but it's not meant to be. He says no, it's specific curse words she calls him, like mother effer. Shaun asks Kara about the status of her singing career, and asks if it's bringing in money. Kara says in the music industry, it can take years to see money. I thought it was funny they showed a shot of Libby nodding at this. I think she was agreeing because she had that YouTube channel where she'd sing kid songs, but for her to equate that venture with her being in the music industry is a stretch. They show a clip of Kara's music career and how they've had this issue between them, how she wanted him to come to her shows and he wouldn't. Shaun asks Kara for her reaction to the footage. She says she realizes she ended up married to someone who doesn't support her, and she starts crying. Gino says he thinks Guillermo should have been there for her and supported her, and Jasmine gives Gino a look. Guillermo says when she was going out to sing, she'd go out to parties afterwards and end up at someone else's house till like 4 a.m. Gino says they were just having fun. Yara agrees and says she didn't cheat on you and she was just having a good time. Brandon's still falling asleep. Andre says if Guillermo went out till 4 in the morning, you'd be okay with it? Dodging the question, Kara says if he had a show, she'd support his show. Jovi says he thinks she's using the music as an excuse to go out. Guillermo says if he'd done the same thing, he'd be in trouble. Kara says if he was doing the same thing, she'd be by his side the whole time. But in my opinion, that's because she likes to party. I also think it's highly unlikely she'd be okay with Guillermo going to parties till 4 a.m. at the house of someone who has a romantic interest in him and who's tried to make advances towards him. Guillermo says, look, I have a problem with Kara when she drinks. When she drinks, she's a completely different person, and she knows it. He says he was scared of going to those shows because she'd drink and act differently, that she gets cozied up with other guys and dances with them. Georgie says, of course he's not going to want to watch you hanging out with other people. Kara's like, he could also enjoy himself. Darcy gives Kara a look here. Shaun asks Kara if she thinks she becomes a different person when she drinks. Kara says she thinks she becomes more fun. Jasmine says, for you, not for Guillermo. He doesn't look like he has fun when you drink. Jasmine seems to be getting back at Kara now for those remarks she made earlier to Matt about her. Andre says Guillermo basically thinks she's not wife material. Kara says she's never changed since day one, and he was fine with who she was, and he's the one who's changed. Matt says what if she stopped drinking and just did an hour of networking after the show? Guillermo says that would be great. He says they did agree she has a problem with drinking, that it's not only his opinion, but Kara also told him at one point she'd stop. Shaun asks Kara to confirm this, and she says it's true. She said she did this in an effort to save their marriage, but Guillermo says it only lasted 2 weeks. She says he was still being difficult, so she went back to drinking. Shaun asks if Kara thought she had a drinking problem, and Kara admits she's gone too far with drinking sometimes. Shaun says when she gave up alcohol, did she just do it for Guillermo or also for herself? Kara says a little of both, as she knows alcohol isn't good for you and doesn't make you feel good. Shaun's like, but you only gave it 2 weeks? Now Kara gives Shaun a look, but she says yes. Shaun says, do you think you should have gone a little longer? Kara again says no, because he was still being difficult. Guillermo says Kara doesn't like when people tell her what to do. Kara says she knows this about herself and can own this. He says even Kara's mom told him she's the type that will do whatever she wants and to be careful. Shaun brings up another issue in their relationship, how Guillermo became suspicious of a relationship she had with a local DJ. They show clips where he's explaining how Kara goes to Latin night events with her friends with this DJ and stays out all night, and that she and the DJ have a past. Kara in the clip explains that she hooked up with the DJ one time in 2011, that the DJ hosts every bachata night, so of course she'll be at his events. Guillermo says the DJ is the same guy who, when they first got married, was writing to her and trying to break them up. Shaun asks Kara to explain her relationship with the DJ. She says they became friends in 2008 in the bachata scene and had schmecks one time in 2011, but she immediately told him it was a mistake and wanted to stay friends. They both got married to other people, and why would she not call up a friend from the bachata scene to help her out? Alexi asks if the DJ is still married. Kara says yes, but Guillermo says no. Kara whines, yes, they're still legally married. Georgie asks the best question of the segment. He says, it's okay to work with this guy, but is it necessary to go to an after party till 4 a.m.? Kara says, yeah, that's debatable. Georgie says he'd be uncomfortable too, which is interesting because we know Darcy hangs out with Florian drinking all night. Shaun says to Kara she gets the impression there's something she's holding back. Kara is really feeling herself here as she says, let's be honest, if I called the DJ guy tomorrow and was like, let's hook up, I have no doubt he would. Jovi says he's on Guillermo's side. Me too, Jovi. It seems like Kara gets a kick out of making Guillermo uncomfortable with other men showing interest in her. Kara says she wants nothing to do with the DJ guy, that it takes two to tango, and she's not going to do anything, so he needs to trust her. He says his insecurities make him feel uncomfortable about this. She says she's had a conversation with the DJ about how she doesn't like his being so amorous and forward with her. She implies that apparently when he sees her, he tries to give her hugs and kisses. At this point, there's lots of looks from the other cast members. Shaun says, do you think the combo of the late nights, the drinking, the fact that there may be parties at a guy's house who likes you and he's separated from his wife, that all of this could be an issue? Shaun says it's the perfect storm. Kara says despite this, she's never done anything, that if she wanted to F the DJ, she would have done it a million times already, 10 years ago. Guillermo says in this scenario the problem is not with the DJ, it's with her. He says he has a problem with how he tells her how he feels uncomfortable, and she still does it. She says she's always been a partier, flirty, and harsh with her tone, so he knew what he was getting into. Shaun asks if Kara ever cheated on Guillermo, and she says no, that she's cheated on other people in the past, but not with him. Shaun asks if Guillermo believes her. He says sure. Kara's like, sure. He says his way to deal with this is to let it go. He says she was the love of his life, but it feels like the person he fell in love with is no longer there, and he needs to accept it. She starts crying and says she pictured things going differently and was ride or die for him. Shaun brings up a time when Kara's mom told her about suspicions she had about Guillermo when Kara was in Mexico visiting her friend. The mom had explained she'd been waiting for Guillermo to pick up their son. She and her husband finally went to his house, and when he showed up, he was disheveled and immediately went to take a shower, so she thought that was suspicious. Shaun asked Guillermo, you don't remember this? He says he usually goes paddling in the river, so he was probably dirty from that and had to shower. Kara says he wasn't coming from the river that day, but was coming from work. Jovi says he thinks Kara's the problem. Shaun asks if the next step is divorce. Everyone looks shocked at this idea. This surprised me because I thought that was a logical next step. Kara says they're separated now, and that's working for them to co-parent. Shaun asks Kara if part of her wants to work it out with Guillermo. She says yes, but doesn't think it's the best route for them to stay together. Shaun says during their couples therapy, Guillermo had said he wasn't sure if he loved Kara. She asks if he does love her. He says yes, she's the mother of his kids. Kara says he doesn't love all of her. He says where he grew up, the mother of your kids is your woman. But ultimately he says he's not sure what he thinks. That sometimes he's not sure what's going on since he's going through so much pain. Shaun wraps up their segment by wishing them well. Personally, I think it was messed up for Kara to continue partying all night after getting married and after Guillermo told her he wasn't comfortable with it, and especially with a man who still has romantic interest in her. She admitted during this tell-all that going out all night probably isn't something she needs to do, and that she could network for an hour instead like Georgie suggested. And she admitted she probably drinks more than she should, and she flirts, etc., but she still continued that behavior. I also don't like that she wants Guillermo removed from the deed on their house. She said he contributed to other things like food. Then she explained things like food don't accrue interest like a house does. But that's such faulty reasoning. Both people are contributing, and if she thought his contributions didn't mean anything if they were only for food, she should have made that clear from the beginning. But she said herself that sometimes she'd pay more for the house and sometimes he would, so she even admitted he has contributed to it. So for him to get nothing out of it seems really messed up. Also, she's 6 years older than him, and I looked it up and he was 21 and she was 27 when they first started dating, so he was super young and naive. So I feel like she might have taken advantage of the fact that he was naive about the house situation by not explaining that he'd get nothing if he wasn't contributing half to it. At this point, they take a break, during which Julia goes up to Shaun and says she's not sure what to do. Shaun tells her it'll be okay and gives her a hug. With everyone back at their seats, Shaun asks Julia and Brandon how they're doing, and Julia starts crying. They explain their fertility journey has been tough. Julia says they've had miscarriages in the past, and that's why they're waiting so long to tell people. She says she's 6 months pregnant now, but has a high-risk pregnancy, and says every day if she feels the baby kicking, she knows it's still okay. She says Brandon's excited to tell people, but she doesn't want to and then possibly lose it. Everyone congratulates them, and several cast members share hugs with Julia. It was a surprisingly touching scene for a tell-all. Shaun says, "You haven't told Brandon's parents?" Julia says no, and that her relationship with his mom is rough. Brandon wants to tell his parents, but says he wants to respect her decision and not cause her more stress. But that's not how we saw him acting in the recent episodes. Shaun asks if they thought of boundaries they want to set with his parents. Julia says last time they had schmecks at their house, his parents came through the front door and Brandon had to run up and shut it. Julia asks everyone who thinks Betty will try to move into their house once she finds out about the pregnancy, and everyone raises their hand. Jasmine jokes that as soon as they get home from the tell-all, Betty will be there. Julia says she still hasn't told her parents either. Andre suggests they call them. She and Brandon are like, should we call our parents? Again, what is the surprise here? I thought that's what the plan was all along. Julia asks for her phone, and Brandon says he thinks he's going to cry. Shaun says it's 11:30 p.m. in Russia. Julia calls her parents and shows them her belly, and they're very excited when they find out. They ask how far along she is, and she says 6 months. Now they call Brandon's parents, as Shaun brings Betty and Ron on the video screen. As always, Betty has a full glass of wine. They say they haven't seen Brandon and Julia much recently, and didn't see them for Betty's birthday or Father's Day. Brandon says the distance between them is something they want to fix. Betty says they love Julia, but they feel the divide. Julia says she was trying to establish boundaries, but wants to fix their relationship. Betty says that's all she ever wanted. Ironically, Betty then says, what if there were grandkids? That would make this even harder. Everyone's looking around like, oop. Betty says Julia needs to make the first attempt to reach out because they've tried, but every time they've tried, Julia has closed the door on them. This made me picture the scene Julia described of Brandon running to slam the front door when his parents walked in on them having schmecks. Julia says there's a reason they've disconnected. Betty's like, what? Tell us. But they leave us on a cliffhanger here, so we'll see what happens in part 3 next week. I'm hoping someone will call out Brandon for how he's been treating Julia. Hopefully Shaun will show clips of some of that. But maybe TLC wants to be nice since they're having a baby, and I can see that reasoning. But hopefully if not at this tell-all, then at least after the baby is born, Shaun will call out Brandon for this and show clips of him being a brat when he always takes his parents' side. I also hope his parents are called out for their intrusive behavior at some point. Anyway, that's it for this half of part 2 of the tell-all. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.